I can do this and get away with it. I'm that smart.
We were dealing with a heartless creature.
You might say there's two Floridas. One where tourists come to frolic, and another where hard-working people grow oranges, serve in the military, and raise families. Alturas is one of those places, a speck on the map, dead center of the state.
Alturas is a great little town. It's a very close-knit community. Everybody knows each other, and it's a great place to live and a great place to raise a family.
For Peggy and her new husband, Pi, it seems like the perfect place to blend their two families.
When I went there for the first time to see the house, I could see us all being a family there and enjoying, you know, the home there.
Is it a little cool?
Pi Carr's a phosphate miner who has lived here for more than a decade. Raising two teenagers as a single dad, he's just convinced Peggy to leave a nearby small town and move in with him, bringing her 3 kids along.
I appreciated Pi for what he was doing, you know, falling in love with my mom and taking on her 3 kids too, and offering to blend us all together. And I like Pi. I like Pi a lot.
The new Peggy and Pi household is a happy bunch. Pi's kids are Tammy and Travis. Peggy's are Dwayne, Alan, and Jelena. And Peggy's also a grandma. Jelena is a single mom with a 2-year-old daughter named Casey. For Peggy and Pi, it's been a whirlwind romance.
My mom had a restaurant in Fort Meade, and he would come in and he would kind of flirt with her a little bit and ask me to introduce him.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give it to her.
At first, she didn't really want anything to do with him. She wasn't interested, and then, I don't know, I think he just kind of kept being persistent, and finally, she said yes.
From there, things moved quickly for the happy couple. And everyone in the area was delighted to have their whole gang in our midst.
This was a fresh start. They seemed really in love, and we were excited for Mom. I think all of us were excited about the move, excited about the change. We started making friends right away.
For Peggy and her children, it seems like everything is finally coming together.
Alturas was a very safe place to live. The people there were all friends, everybody knew each other, and you knew that you could grow up and love and live there forever.
But all the love and warm feelings are put to the test when evil descends on the neighborhood. For now, though, it's nothing but sunshine for Pi Carr's new clan. They are welcomed by George and Diana Trapal, who've lived next door to Pi for half a dozen years. George is a computer whiz who works at home. Diana is a successful orthopedic surgeon.
We all knew that she was a doctor, so we wanted to respect her and like her right away.
George and Diana don't have children, and they place a lot of value on privacy and quiet. But that's a tall order, with 5 kids across the way.
I was a typical teenager. Dwayne and I, and Travis too, we were always working on our cars. We were always fixing motorcycles, cars, whatever.
Teens hanging out in the yard, a big, joyous family. For Peggy, it's a dream come true, even if the noise levels might be a little trying for the folks next door.
You know what? Before we begin, let's just all hold
I think she enjoyed having a house full of people, a house full of kids. My mom really expected us to have dinner together. That was one of the rules. So we would all sit around and laugh and joke and talk.
The best news for Peggy is that her kids and Pies become best friends.
Me and Tammy hit it off right away. I was honored to have a sister. I really, really liked the fact that I had another brother, and they just made it easy to be their sibling.
We seem to blend real well.
George and Pie have always been cordial, if never close. In the entire time they've been neighbors, only once has there been serious friction.
There had been confrontation over the car's dogs chasing the Tripal's cats.
But things were resolved, and, in any case, Pie's dogs died of a strange illness soon afterwards. Since then, it's all been peace and harmony between the two men.
Can you wave hi to George?
My first impression of George when I saw him, I remember he used to wear sandals with socks, and I thought that was very nerdy. But, I thought he was nice, because he would wave at us.
Soon, though, the growing household next door proves to be too much for George.
Pie said that he'd take the pool house and make it into a two-bedroom apartment for me and my stepsister, Tammy.
The renovation drives their neighbor crazy.
Down, my wife's trying to sleep in the house.
I'm sorry, I'm doing renovations.
I understand that, but you're cutting all the time. It's so loud.
George didn't really approve of that, didn't like that, but that Pie didn't really care. And I think that's the kind of person Pie was. He was just very, I'm gonna do it whether you like it or not.
I can't help you. I gotta get this done.
Before the reno is complete, George calls a city inspector, who shuts the project down. With one phone call, he has managed to foil his neighbor's plans.
Who complained?
I don't really know why he had such a problem with that.
You gotta be kidding.
The houses aren't that close together.
Soon there are other signs of trouble. Inside the house, Pie and Peggy's fairy tale romance is starting to develop some cracks.
About 4 months into the marriage, we started seeing my mom and Pie argue.
I didn't do anything.
What do you mean you didn't do anything? I already had to go through this in my past. I don't need it again from you. Stay there. I don't want you to touch me.
I didn't do anything.
And outside, the neighbors escalate the clampdown on their disturbed peace.
Turn that music down right now. What is going on here?
Diana was always complaining. She was always unhappy.
You guys have no regard for other people, okay? But
Diane came outside and wanted to yell and insisted on talking to my mom.
Diana, what seems to be the problem? Oh, what seems to be the problem? Your boys are out of control. That's what the problem is. This music.
You know, this lady just blasted Mom, and Mom didn't swear. She wouldn't say anything hateful or anything back. She would only try to explain. They're just being boys. They're just washing their vehicle. I'll get them to turn the music down, and she would try to appease this lady.
This is a disturbance. Look, you need to calm down.
Finally, Peggy snaps.
Get off my property now! How dare you?
Peggy was a very sweet woman. At the same time, she was the type of person who was going to be walked on. She was not going to allow people to upset her family or upset her life, that she's going to stand up for herself.
For Peggy, the tension is getting unbearable. There's angry neighbors next door, and a new marriage that's turning out to be less wonderful than she thought.
My mom revealed to me that she had some suspicion of Pie cheating, and she was very upset about that.
Pie, how could you do this to me?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Come on.
The relationship deteriorates, and attempts at reconciliation falter.
Stay away.
And I was hurt, because I'm the one who introduced him to my mother. So I felt like not only did he hurt my mother, but he disappointed and hurt me.
With her dreams of happiness hanging by a thread, and the Tripals next door watching her family's every move, the last thing Peggy needs is more trouble. But she's about to get it, in spades.
I thought she had the flu. She said that she was tired, she was sick to her stomach.
Peggy's known as a hard worker, but today, she can't finish her shift.
One thing that I felt was odd and out of character for the flu was that she said she couldn't open her eyes. Her eyelids were very heavy, and she felt burning in her feet and in her hands.
Her symptoms continued to escalate to the point where she couldn't even walk. She had become so incredibly weak that she was just not able to do anything for herself.
Her family is about to learn this is only the beginning of the plunge into hell.
Cars had actually received a note that said, you need to get out of Florida or you're all going to die.
My brother, he goes, I feel sick. My hands are tingling and on fire, and I can't hardly walk.
It's like everything stops. It changes everything.
Peggy Carr has come down with a strange illness. She's seen a doctor and been sent back home. But now she's getting worse by the day, and her children are frantic.
I remember just kind of pushing Pi. You know, we need to take my mom back to the ER. We need to take her to the hospital.
Curiously, Peggy's husband Pi has a better idea. He invites his sister over. Carolyn's a nurse.
Carolyn kept giving her cola and trying to make sure that my mom drank a lot of fluids. I felt like Carolyn was not a doctor, she was a nurse. And I felt like she needed to go see a doctor.
Finally, no one can ignore how sick Peggy has become.
Pi finally came down to my apartment and said, I'm going to take your mom to the hospital. I think she needs to go. They admitted her because they thought she had some kind of viral infection.
Doctors can't figure out exactly what is wrong with her. All they know is that this tough, hard-working 42-year-old woman is completely incapacitated.
I was in class in the Navy and got an emergency message. I flew into Orlando and met Jelena. I knew it was serious when Jelena told me we were going straight to the hospital. We weren't going anywhere else.
Exhaustive tests are run, and the cause of Peggy's illness is finally discovered. It's a massive shock to everyone.
The doctor, I can remember his face as clear as if it were yesterday.
What we've discovered is there is a poison in her system.
And he tells you that it's a heavy metal poisoning.
Peggy's been poisoned with thallium nitrate, a compound last used in the 50s and 60s in rat poison.
What goes through your mind is, what does it take to get her out of here? What's got to happen now? Do I have to give blood, or does she need something from me? How can I help her? There's got to be something I can do.
But the next piece of news is even more devastating. Thallium poisoning has no antidote, and the horror doesn't stop there. Soon, half the family is sick. First, Peggy's son, Dwayne. Then Pi's son, Travis, develops the symptoms too.
I remember asking Dwayne, what does it feel like? He just described like needle pricks on all of his extremities.
The thallium had been pulled from the shelves years ago and was no longer available, which left authorities trying to find where this rat poison had came from. First place they looked was in the wells. And there was extreme concern that the water system in that area may have become contaminated.
Next-door neighbors George and Diana Trapal share a well with Pi. They've been told that thallium is tasteless, odorless, and deadly.
They were very vigilant. They started drinking bottled water. They were concerned that if it could have happened to her, it could happen to us.
But the wells are clean. Police now think someone has deliberately poisoned Peggy and her family. But who could it possibly be? Investigators are stunned to learn that Pi's family had recently been the target of a death threat.
We found out during our investigation is that the cars had actually received a note, like a typed note, several weeks before.
And it said, you and your so-called family all need to move out of the state of Florida or you will all be killed.
The family laughed it off and didn't report it to police. A bad call in hindsight. Authorities now scour Pi's house for clues.
I believe there was over 400 items that were taken from their house and sent to the lab to be tested.
Soon, they discover how the deadly thallium had entered the home. One of the items sent for testing was a half-empty six-pack of cola.
The lab actually found high doses in the bottles that were left. High dose of thallium.
So they traced it back to the bottling plant and reviewed that bottling plant from top to bottom and never could find any reason to believe that that was the source.
It was determined that these bottles were molested. You know, they were tampered with.
And police think they know who might have done it.
Law enforcement began looking at Pi car.
Detective Ernie Mincy learns that Pi's marriage is strained. And that he was conveniently away when Peggy fell ill.
Got Pi, who all of a sudden is elusive now. You know, he's not around, he's not standing beside you. When you and Jelena are talking to the doctor, Pi is nowhere to be found. And they started to suspect that there was something else going on.
I had heard that he had life insurance on my mom. The fact that my mom thought he had been cheating. He didn't want to take her to the hospital. So I immediately thought that Pi had poisoned our family.
But one thing doesn't add up for Mincy. Everyone who knows Pi knows he loves his son, Travis.
Travis had become very ill, and he was probably the most ill after Peggy and was hospitalized. And the question remained, why would Pi do that to his own son?
And then I thought, well, maybe Travis accidentally got poisoned.
Without proof, police quickly reach an impasse.
They decided to contact the FBI and get their behavioral analysis unit involved to come up with a profile of who they were looking for.
The FBI sends one of their best, Bill Hagmeyer, who helped solve the infamous Ted Bundy case.
It's sort of new on the scene.
You know, two flags went up right away. Somebody has something against this particular family, and someone's in a position to know when they can get that poison into their house without being seen.
As he builds a profile of the poisoner, Hagmeyer highlights the significance of thallium.
They were doing a review of 8,000 homicides, and only 8 were poisonings, and none of them were thallium. Well, thallium as a weapons choice would reflect that it's someone who has a background in chemistry.
It's clear the perpetrator is highly skilled at disguising his work.
It's 8 of them from poisoning.
I can recall our lab technician telling me how impressed they were that this was put into the bottle, and the cap, these were the metal caps that were clip-ons at that time by pressure. They had difficulty in finding any tool mark evidence on it.
For Hagmeyer, the poisoner's most dangerous quality is his moral character, or complete lack of it.
Thallium's extremely dangerous. An overdose of it would probably eliminate you pretty quickly, but the real frightening part of this is it's the type of poison that takes its toll over a period of time. They were going to punish these persons. It was one of the more vile things I've seen done because it is an effect of hair falling out, organs declining, failure of physiological systems.
Watching this crime play out,
it was like they were taking some joy out of not only killing people, but watching them die in misery. And that's not common to see that.
In other words, somewhere nearby, maybe even in your own home, a psychopath is lurking.
I was afraid to eat or drink anything because I didn't know who had poisoned us.
And there's no telling where he'll stop.
I felt like I was in a fog, you know, not really understanding what's going on, but trying to focus on taking care of my brother and my mom.
A month after being poisoned, Peggy Carr slips into a coma. It devastates her children.
It changes everything. You think, who cares about the military? Your world stops right there.
The whole family lives on high alert.
I was afraid to eat or drink anything because I didn't know who had poisoned us. I didn't know who would want to hurt our family in that way.
The poisoner really felt that, hey, I can do this and get away with it. I'm that smart.
As they piece together the crime, law enforcement realizes how much planning it would have taken to pull it off.
It had to be someone who was familiar with the going and comings of this particular family. That's extremely important.
The poisoner watched closely and learned the family's favorite drink. Most types of thallium are volatile, but the assailant found one version, thallium nitrate, that served his dark purpose. He carefully loaded a six-pack of cola with poison and planted his deadly weapon in the Carr's house without being seen. It's a work of daring genius.
With that choice of a weapon, they believe that they're probably brighter than law enforcement, and it would be very difficult for us to identify it, much less trace it back to its source.
well, that would explain why.
After hundreds of interviews with neighbors and friends of the family, police have a profile of the perpetrator, but no actual suspect.
We don't see a lot of motive anywhere. Some small problems within the family, small problems with the neighbors, but nothing that would rise to the level of murder.
Unless Pye's neighbors didn't see their problems with his family as small, but rather something that warranted extreme retaliation. Detective Mincy pores over the case file, and something new jumps out at him. Neighbor George Travol's complaint about Pye's dogs 4 years earlier, and their subsequent death shortly afterwards.
We learned about dogs dying and how their hair was falling out. They probably just assumed the dogs went out and ate something they shouldn't.
Now, police make a chilling connection. While Peggy lay in hospital in agony, her hair was falling out.
You wouldn't think, that somebody would go to these extremes over dogs chasing cats, but obviously with this case, it tends to think they were possibly poisoned as well.
FBI profiler Bill Hagmeyer wonders if a lesson he learned from a previous case applies to George Trapal.
As Ted Bundy once said, once you cross that line, it's much easier to do it the next time.
Detective Ernie Mincy decides to pay George a friendly visit. His host is surprisingly chatty.
Why would anybody want to do this?
To get them to move?
That resonated with Ernie Mincy. He remembered back to the note that had been left at the Carr family home that said, "You need to move out."
When Mincy runs a background check on George, he makes an alarming discovery.
In the 1970s, he had actually been sent to prison. He was a chemist. He was actually cooking methamphetamine. And he had been busted, manufacturing methamphetamine. One of the chemicals that can be used in that is thallium.
The detective now knows that George has the skills to use the poison that's killing Peggy Carr.
So we're starting to get even more suspicion towards Mr. Trapal at that point.
And he learns something else about George's time in prison. While inside, he launched an official complaint about his fellow inmates. Their music was too loud.
Turn that music down right now. My husband and I are at home. We can't even hear ourselves sing.
It seems more than another intriguing coincidence, but there is still no physical evidence tying George to the crime.
He had been interviewed. He was not going to slip up. They felt that his intellect was such that he was going to be careful about what he said.
Detective Hegmeyer sees only one way to get George, an undercover agent.
Most of us have two weaknesses that we're men, and one is sex and one is ego.
They felt that the only way they were going to get George was if they went undercover.
The assignment falls to Detective Susan Gorick. Her job, befriend a man who may be a monster.
Susan put her life in jeopardy to conduct this investigation.
At any given moment, he could have figured out what was going on, and she could have been in tremendous danger.
For exclusive footage, go to investigationdiscovery.com.
The doctors came and told us that they didn't think that my mom was going to make it and that we needed to take her off the ventilator.
Poisoned with deadly thallium, Peggy Carr has been in a coma for 4 months. Finally, her family makes the difficult decision.
You look down and that's not your mom. You have to kind of consider her suffering and consider what the doctors told you.
With the flick of a switch, this poisoning becomes a murder investigation. Angelina has a strong suspicion of where police should look.
How could you? How could you do this?
I knew the fact that my mom thought I had been cheating. I felt like he didn't want to take her to the hospital when I thought he should. I just had my mindset that Pi was the one who did this.
But police believe their suspect is next-door neighbor George Trapal, driven to kill simply because the Carr family made too much noise. Detective Susan Gorick studies the men she must now befriend.
So we thought if we employed an undercover female to try to gain his confidence, to try to establish rapport with him, that we might have him let down his guard.
But figuring out how to get close to George take months. The investigation seems to be going nowhere, and it's killing Jelena. Detective Ernie Mincy can't tell her that the man in their sights is her neighbor without jeopardizing the case.
I need answers right now on what happened to my mom.
Me and Ernie had gotten into quite a bit of a heated argument, and Susan came up and she gave me a hug. I said, I just want to know who did this to my mom, and she said, we're going to find out who did this.
To set up the sting, police learn everything they can about George Trapal. They discover that George and Diana are members of an elite society, Mensa.
Mensa is an organization for people who are highly intelligent. I believe it's the top 1% of the population.
That gives law enforcement the opening they've been looking for.
Well, we find a article in a newspaper where Diane and George Trapal are holding a murder mystery weekend for Mensa members. Basically, they're going to host this. It's going to be a weekend long of murder mystery.
They would stage a murder, and then they would leave clues around, and then it would be up to the members to find out who committed the murder.
The plan is for Detective Susan Gorick to infiltrate the event.
She was able to do the undercover work to present herself as Sherry Gwynn, a woman who's running from an estranged husband who's abusive, who she basically doesn't have any help, and George is there to give her that help.
Susan, posing as Sherry Gwynn, writes George an eager letter asking to attend the murder mystery night. She adds a revealing personal detail. Her despised ex-husband is an attorney.
We had learned through some of the background that George Trapal did not like attorneys. So we had this backfilled story of, hey, she's just moving here. She's running from this attorney husband who's making life a living hell for her, and she needs some help. So it gives George a chance to basically be the knight in shining armor.
George falls for the ruse and invites Susan to the event. He sends her a package to help her prepare. It's a humorous pamphlet that lays out how the first character might be killed.
In there, George or Diane, they're talking about a murder that's been done by poisoning. She makes reference in there as to, you should move away. You should throw food and drink that's in your house away if you're being threatened by poisoning. So a lot of things here are paralleling the real-life investigation.
Please help us.
When the big night arrives, a nervous Susan makes sure to flatter her host to gain his favor.
We needed George to be the dominant personality, a role he wasn't normally used to in interaction with females in all probability.
The goals at that point were just to try and get introduced to George or Diane, to become part of their life, to gain some of their trust.
Tonight, everyone is acting, including the evening first victim. As the guests search for clues in the pretend murder case, police realize they're on the right track in the real one.
We knew from our research that people that are poisoners were people who lived in fantasy worlds, who thought about these crimes. We can't say someone's innocent or guilty, but as this case was developing, it just gave more and more support that the investigators were onto the right person.
Susan's effort to ingratiate herself with her hosts is successful and leads to a chance to get even closer.
I love this place. This house is just so beautiful.
Thank you. Actually, we're thinking of moving.
Really? Mm-hmm. Would you be interested in selling?
Finding out that they were going to move gave us an opportunity to change the scenario and make a right turn. Let Sherry explain to them that I got to get away from my husband. I'm not going to live with him. I got to find another place to live in a hurry. We were hoping that George would see this as a mirror of his own situation with the Barr family, that there was a source of aggravation that could not be escaped and at some point had to be removed.
George reacts as hoped. He reveals a vast collection of murder mystery books. These, he implies, are where Susan can find the answer to her ex-husband problems.
By means of giving her literature, there was no doubt he was giving her advice indirectly, and he had determined that she was bright enough to catch on. He basically was telling her how to eliminate your husband.
Susan's new friend thinks he's found a kindred spirit. He doesn't know. He's just stepped into her trap.
Law enforcement was crawling all over that property, just checking every nook and corner to see what evidence they could find.
I wanted to know who did it, and I wanted to know who did it now.
It's been more than a year since Peggy Carr was poisoned and died a slow and painful death. Her family still doesn't know who's responsible. However, Jelena still suspects her stepfather.
We were not allowed to be in the house because at that time it was a crime scene. So we had to find other places to live.
Peggy's son Dwayne is finally well enough to be released from hospital. But Pi has not only lost his wife to poison, his son, Travis, is still terribly ill. It seems that George Trapal's plan has worked. He's destroyed the family next door. Their place is finally quiet.
I don't think there was any doubt in George's mind that he had contrived and executed the perfect crime.
The Trapals move to a new house, but decide not to sell their old one to undercover agent Susan Gorick, posing as their new friend, Sherry Gwynn. Had they done so, she could have searched it for evidence. Now that chance is gone.
We don't have a lot of hard evidence at this time. All we have is a poisoning, and we've got a guy who's made some strange comments and had a murder mystery weekend. So could we have gotten a search warrant? I don't think we could have at that point.
But Susan isn't giving up. If she can't buy his old house, maybe there's another way in. She has George meet her for lunch.
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
She plans to see, hey, I need a place to live. Maybe I could rent your house.
The fate of the investigation hangs on George's decision.
Really glad.
George takes the bait. I mean, he takes it, and it works out perfectly. Now we're allowed to move into this house. Don't need a search warrant.
Within hours of Susan renting George's property, crime scene technicians move in.
We're going through everything. I mean, we're just like we did with the Carr's house. It's time to send everything off and test it. Let's see what we can find.
Now police want to spook their suspect and gauge his reaction.
We basically had to load the gun with more ammunition. In other words, what we needed to do was to get him to respond.
Susan calls George again. She tells him police have come around, inquiring about his possible connection to a crime.
They question me about us and about you.
I think George is sweating bullets at this particular moment. He's not used to this kind of stress.
This is all very strange. If they interested me, it would be because of the county poisoning next door to you.
George is reacting. What did Sherry give them? What's my recourse here? They're talking to her. What does she know?
George invites Susan to visit his new home in a nearby town. That's one proposition she needs to turn down.
George is thinking Sherry's value in my life may have expired. I can't allow a threat to exist to my freedom.
Listen, stay in touch. Let me know.
Somebody that's coming in their house may not come back out.
Afternoon.
Finally, the forensic team at George's old place hits the jackpot.
One of the bottles we find in the house, we send it off to the lab, and it comes back with thallium. The same type of poison used as our murder weapon.
That is exactly what we were looking for.
Well, now we're like, we've got him. You know, we're there.
For police, there is no doubt. George Trapal is Peggy Carr's killer. That night, they descend on his new home. George is arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Searching his new house, authorities find more evidence tying him to the crime.
They discovered a book that described different kinds of chemicals. And included in that book was a chapter on thallium. They processed that for fingerprints and found on that particular page, it was just laden with George's fingerprints. They also found a secret room in the basement of the new house that had been made soundproof. The window had been obscured.
I think Detective Gorick, I think she kind of had a question at that point. Hey, was this room maybe meant for me?
At last, Detective Mincy can tell Peggy's children they've made an arrest in their mother's killing.
It was your neighbor, George.
We arrested him last night.
And I was like, you have the wrong person. Ernie, he did not do this. He was nice. He would wave at me.
I never suspected him. It's like being betrayed by a friend.
This is a perfect example of a monster living next door.
George is tried for the murder of Peggy Carr and the attempted murder of her family. There's no evidence his wife was involved, and she is never charged.
We, the jury, find the defendant, George J. Trepal, guilty of first-degree murders.
Judge Maloney sentenced George Trepal to death for the death of Peggy Carr.
For Peggy's children, life would never be the same.
I think it made me and my brothers closer. I think it made us a little weary of who we trust.
Dwayne will need more than a year to fully recover from his poisoning. Travis feels the effects to this day.
It hurts, it's painful, but I wish no bad on George Trepal, no harm at all.
I had to forgive Trepal in order to move on with my life, because I couldn't carry the hate that I had for him.
George Trepal remained on death row. He still complains that the music is too loud.